Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for coming back to another episode of our podcast, A While Back. Today's episode is going to be titled Grandpa, Mr. Green Thumb. So, Grandpa has got quite a green thumb, as we're all aware.
Really, we're laughing about that one.
Yes. He's had several gardens over the past few years that have produced a ton of corn, a ton of squash, a ton of green beans, okra.
Okra's not that good for me.
Okra's not that good for him. All right. But everything else that he usually does, and tomatoes, yes. Everything else he usually does is really, it takes off, and it has a lot that comes out of each and every plant. So he's really good with that kind of stuff. Unfortunately, what he's going to lead off with, though, is his winter garden. He did not have such a great winter garden as he had hoped. But we're going to go on and let him explain that to us right now. So, Dad, what did you want to say about your winter garden?
Well, what I'd like to say about the winter garden this year, I noticed that on the broccoli and even the cabbage, it didn't turn out the way I liked it to. Now, the broccoli, I mean, it grew really high. It grew like maybe 3 feet high or higher. But it didn't produce any broccoli. All it did was produce a bunch of yellow flowers. And you talk about bees. I mean, I've got a lot of bees.
I know you got plenty of bees, yeah.
Broccoli, but as far as getting heads of broccoli, we didn't get any this year. In fact, they were so small that, all they turned was to yellow flowers.
Well, it's a surprise.
Yeah. And I don't know if it was the seed or what, but that was surprising. And then also with the cabbage plants, they never did form heads like they normally do. The heads this year just wouldn't form. I don't know if it was the seed, the weather, or what, but it just didn't form like it normally does during the growing season.
Well, it was a little bit drier, but you kept watering
it was.
too.
Yeah,
So.
I did water it. I mean, it did water it, but it seemed like not to make a difference. Now, the lettuce would have made if I hadn't let my cow go in there and chew that up.
Right,
That took care of the lettuce, but the lettuce was doing good. But now the red beets, I planted some red beets, and they did fair, but they didn't do as good as normally.
Right.
So, yeah, the winter garden was really a flop for me. But I started tilling now for the spring garden, and hopefully the spring garden will turn out a little better than the winter garden did this year.
Well, good. So let's talk about the other gardens that you had like for even last year and the past few years. So every single year he has an overabundance of corn, overabundance of squash, plenty of green beans. So do you want to speak to that? How do you have such outstanding gardens, especially springtime gardens, not just in one location on the place, but also in a second spot over here too?
Yeah, well, the only thing about that is, you got to work the soil.
Mm-hmm.
And I do fertilize it very low, though. I more or less didn't have to fertilize that much, but I do fertilize just lightly with commercial fertilizer.
Mm-hmm.
But the garden, last year especially, it was a heck of a year for squash, corn, green beans, and everything. I even tried to grow a few lima beans last year. And in fact, those lima beans got so bushy and so tall, but they never produced for me.
Wow.
But I think what I did, I planted them too late because I think I planted them like in April, 1st of April, which was too late for lima beans. Because I think they say that you got to plant those a little earlier. But the potatoes did really well last year too. I forgot about
the potatoes. Yeah,
the potatoes.
There was quite a few of those. Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm looking to keep, planting the garden. And I've noticed already that, a lot of people, they go by the Farmer's Almanac.
Right.
And I know I've got brothers and sisters and brothers and in-laws and sister-in-laws. They all go by that Farmer's Almanac, a lot of them. But I've never gone by that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I just planned it when I got time. But I think it might be a good idea to go by that because I know I had a brother, my oldest brother, man, he believed in that.
Oh, Uncle Adolf?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Adolf, he believed in that almanac. It was unreal.
Wow.
And each year, I mean, he made some good crops, especially on the potatoes and stuff like that. That you had to, you know, made underground
Right.
potatoes. But him and his wife Laverne always had a beautiful garden. But yeah, but I noticed this year already. You know, just looking around, I've noticed that what worries me about this year too, and this happened last year. I noticed those peach trees. They all having blooms on them already, and I'm wondering if it might be a little early. Because last year I know the peaches, they were so pretty and blooming, but it was too early, and then they froze, and then we didn't make any peaches at all. So, you know, the peaches, they're looks like they good one year, and then next year they weren't that good. But I think the weather's got something to do with those. Now, as far as the oranges last year, remember the year before?
A ton of them over there.
Yes, the year before, we had so many oranges, we just giving them away.
Right, exactly.
Now those this year we didn't have over maybe 30 or 40 oranges on the tree. But yeah, it just depends on what the weather, I think, does. If it gets too warm too quick and the trees start budding, and then we get a hard freeze, it'll knock them out. And I think that's what keeps you from getting the fruit.
Yeah, I think it depends on the weather pattern. So, for instance, if all of a sudden you have a nice warm spell come through at the beginning of January, end of December, and then it kind of tricks everything into believing vegetation-wise that, oh, we can start to blossom now. I think that's what happens, and then boom, you get another freeze come through and it kills it. So I think that's probably what had happened over the past year or so. But what I was going to ask you about is, on one of the previous episodes we did, we had talked about natural fertilizer. Mm-hmm. So do you use, because you have an incredible source of it out there.
Oh, yeah.
Do you use the manure in any of the gardens when you plant them every year too?
I used to.
I know you used to, but you still do it?
Not really.
Oh, not anymore? Oh, okay.
It's good, but it produces so many weeds.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And then you're fighting weeds if you use it.
Right.
But it'd be good to use it and maybe let it set for a year.
Yeah.
And then that would work that way. But I don't really use it. What I usually do, I'll just spread it on the pasture.
Yeah.
And it helps the pasture and grass grow.
Well, I know that you had a overabundance of corn and overabundance of squash, because literally you were sitting at home with us every time we come out to visit, and that was for everybody, all the siblings that came. You were always sitting a ton of it at home, and we appreciated it because we all ate it. But there was just so much that came out of these that small garden up front, but then this big garden in the back.
The big garden, the new garden.
That was a ton of vegetables that came out of there. So that was very impressive. On just that little small spot right there, you had that much come out of there.
And what's good about the new garden, I've got it big enough now where I can take the tractor and just take my implements in there and just plow it. I don't have to work it with a tiller like this little one. Right. So it's a little easier to work.
Well, that's good. So how much do you have to water? Now, during the wintertime, I know you got to water it quite a bit if you're going to try and keep it as lush as can be. But what about during the springtime? Do you water every other day? Do you just depend on the rain patterns?
No,
how do you usually do that?
Well, it depends on the rain. Depends on how much rain you get. But if you don't have very much rain, then yes, I like to water every other day.
Every other day?
Yeah. And that way you won't probably overwater it if it's a dry spell. But if it's a lot of rain, then you don't need to water. But yeah, if it's not very much rain, you water usually every other day.
Now, what about the other vegetation that you've got? Because you've got plenty of flowers, plenty of shrubs in the front, around the house, out here in the back. So which ones do you kind of give the most attention to? The flower beds around the house? Or is that strictly Mom? Who takes care of all those?
Well, I think we sort of do that together.
Right.
Sometimes she'll do it, and sometimes I'll do the deal as far as the flowers are concerned. But the garden, one thing about her, she picks the garden. She helps me always pick the garden, which which is a good thing. I don't pick the garden that much, but I do just do everything else with it. But yeah, and talking about those fruit trees again, I noticed that them plum trees are starting to bloom already too.
Yeah.
And like I say, I'm a little worried about that because it is early, and we'll probably have a good freeze yet between here and
Well, I
Easter.
think even coming up in the next week, we're supposed to expect one maybe next weekend.
Oh yeah, I think so. They're
So-
saying it's supposed to get cold.
Yeah, it's supposed to get cold again. So
So,
for
yeah.
those of you that are watching, the timeline is basically that this Sunday coming up is going to be Super Bowl Sunday, and I believe it's going to be right around Valentine's Day is when we're expecting another big front to come through, and it's supposed to lower temperatures quite a bit. So more than likely, I don't think it's going to be that severe, but it's going to be enough to where you're going to have to keep an eye on plenty of pets, and you don't have to worry about your dogs, but the cats and things
Yeah.
like that too. You got to keep an eye on. But yeah, we're expecting another good little front coming through.
Yeah, and I've got my potatoes already with the eyes on them already, ready to plant too. So come about, February 12th, I'll probably be putting those in the ground.
Is that usually when you do it every
Yeah,
year?
I like to do them early because if you plant those potatoes early, you may even get a freeze. But if you get the freeze, all you got to do is throw some hay on them or something to
And
keep
it
them
helps
from
insulate
freezing.
them.
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
and that way because if you don't plant the potatoes early enough, when it gets hot, they just don't produce.
Well, I know that with the flowers and some of the shrubs around the house, Mom's rule of thumb has always been that in the middle of February is when you cut those back
She
too.
cuts those back.
Yeah. So do you
all
do
my
anything like
roses-
that with some of your other
Oh yeah, I
trees
do
and
that
stuff?
with the shrubs. With
Right,
some
right,
of
right.
the other shrubs that we got, cut them back, and most of the time you'll cut them. The ones around the house, you'll cut them, maybe a foot from the ground.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
And by the end of the fall, they're already reaching the top of the house practically.
Good.
So yeah, they grow quick. That, as well as your grass too. It grows in the summertime when it's warm.
So you
But-
think we're going to have a pretty wet spring this year? What's your feeling on it?
I don't really know.
Mm.
It's we haven't had but an inch and I think 5/10 now through January,
And that's it?
which is a bad start.
Yeah,
we
exactly.
need a lot more than that to get going,
Wow.
and it looks like it's going to be another dry. Last year, at least we got some rain. We got quite a bit of rain last year,
Yeah.
but it's looking like it's going to be another dry one.
Well, the good thing is I'm looking at the pond and the tank itself is still holding water pretty well.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
that's a good sign for you. That's a
Yeah.
good thing. So
that's holding real well.
the only thing that's going to cause it quick is if you start to have more of the wind come through quickly and start evaporating that,
Exactly.
because that's going to go through that water real fast. But everything else looks green. Everything else looks good.
Oh yeah.
I know that with the little warm spell that we've had, it's taken off pretty good.
Yeah, it's starting to green up and
Mhm.
everything now. If we get a real, real hot spell, 90 degrees, they'll pretty much evaporate some of the
Right.
water and everything
Yeah.
like that.
Well, you can tell we're getting close to springtime because I see all the birds
Oh yeah,
chasing
yeah.
each other around. So I can
And you know what? Talking about birds, the first I saw some robins
There
I
was-
haven't seen robins in.
There was just one that flew
I
by.
know it.
Right now, while we were talking, I saw him
And
fly by.
they've been here about 3 weeks already, and I told my wife, told Mom, I said, man, I ain't seen robins in probably 6-7 years at least.
Has it been that long? Wow.
It's been a long time since I've seen a robin, but this year I've seen them about 3 weeks ago, and we got 3 or 4 of them around here. So
Well, I just saw the big one fly by, so I saw him right away. That
Yeah.
was he's a
it,
big
it
boy.
shocked me when the first time I
Yeah.
saw it, and I called and Mom and told her, hey, come look, see what we got here. And she came to look, and sure enough, there was a big old robin.
Well, I see you got cardinals because I see both male and females
Oh
running
yeah.
around. So
yeah, we got cardinals, bluebirds. you name
spring
all
is
that.
here already, and they're starting to frolic. So.
The only thing we don't have that many of is scissortails now. We got a lot of mockingbirds.
Well, it's
But-
funny because growing
and
up,
bluebirds.
you remember when we were out here, scissortails were all over the
Oh,
place.
I know it.
And they're good about eating mosquitoes and things like that.
yes, yes.
But you're right. It's been a while since we have seen quite a
Yeah,
few of them
yeah.
running around here.
Yeah, the scissortails aren't like they used to be out around.
Yeah. Now the field larks, I see the field lark population's
Oh yeah,
coming up.
oh yeah, we got plenty of those.
Uh-huh.
And kildees, or
Those are coming back too, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
but
All
stuff
right.
like that.
Well, good. So I think that we covered just about everything regarding Grandpa's green thumb. And after that, the following week is Valentine's.
Yeah.
I know we don't have any plans for Valentine's. Actually, I might even be working on that day. I don't know.
Yeah.
But we don't have anything planned for Valentine's either. So
Oh.
I do know that for spring break, we'll be visiting Zachary, or at least Marty's going to fly there. I don't know if I'll be able to make it or not. But we will be visiting Zachary in Arkansas. So
Oh,
that'll be
that's
a lot
gonna
of
be
fun.
nice.
Yeah.
That's
Finally
gonna be
get to
nice
see the
there.
place over there. So
See the
exactly.
Ozarks in the spring.
Yeah, I'm sure he's going to be doing a lot of hiking and stuff. He's going to want to
There
show
you go.
everything. All right, well, good. So, was there anything else that you wanted to say?
Let me tell you something else.